Okay, so these stories consist of 2 drugs that Jeffrey Dahmer would sedate his victims with, and unfortunately, kill them. He would spike the victims' drink and do horrible things with them. The 2 drugs he would use would be Triazolam, Halcion, or Temazepam, Restorol. Both of these drugs are used to treat insomnia. It may help you fall asleep faster, stay asleep longer, and lessen how often you wake up during the night, so you can get a better night's rest. These 2 pills belong to a class of drugs called benzodiazepines. It acts on your brain to produce a calming effect. I've also learned that these are some of the strongest benzos out there, and it's no surprise to me why Dahmer was so successful in drugging his victims. I just wanted to let you all know which drugs were used and what they do for you. These stories I have chosen for you today are ones where people took this drug recreationally and had horrible effects. Without further ado, let's get started. I was on SSRIs, prescribed for depression, for 2 months, and I decided it wasn't working. My doctor switched me to Wellbutrin, an MAOI, and Temazepam for insomnia. The first night I took 4 15mg pills of Temazepam to see if they can get me high. I didn't feel much. About 2 weeks later, I thought of a bright idea to take 4 more and then have a couple brews. I had been taking 150mg of Wellbutrin daily. About a half an hour later, I started to feel very drunk. I reached for my coat to hang it up and felt into the pockets. Inside was a writhing mass of termites. I ran downstairs to tell one of my roommates that we had a termite infestation and fell down the last 3 steps. I got up quickly and shouted to him to come check my pocket. He told me there was nothing. At that moment, I realized I was hallucinating. I had taken various psychedelics before, including shrooms and LSD, but I had never experienced hallucinations so vivid. I could hear the termites crawling, see them writhing in the pocket of my coat, and feel them against my skin. For all intents and purposes, they were real to me. At that moment, I understood that what I was seeing and feeling wasn't real, but I couldn't physically distinguish the difference. This occurred at 2 a.m., and over the course of the rest of the night, I had intensely realistic hallucinations. I heard footsteps going up and down the stairs and knocking at my bedroom door. I heard various people walking around in my room and could feel the impression they made as they sat on the edge of my bed. When I opened my eyes, they were gone, but when I peeked through the sheets or watched them in the reflection of my phone screen, I could distinguish various characters, 4 different males and 3 females. They would alternate turns of appearing in my room and circling my bed. At first I thought they were friendly, but I slowly realized that they were after my blood. I watched them come at me with a needle when they thought I wasn't looking, and I had to turn to look at them to make them disappear, so I was sure they wouldn't stick me. All the while, spiders crawled along my skin, tickling me until they reached a certain point where they would bite me and disappear, and I would feel a sharp stinging sensation for a few seconds. If I grabbed them off my body, I could feel my fingers crushing their little bodies, but then several more would spring up. At one point, while hiding under my sheets, a face, screaming with its mouth wide open, pressed itself through the sheets, as if trying to bite me. I screamed aloud, and my roommate tells me that he remembers hearing me scream that whole night. All the while, I knew these to be hallucinations. However, having taken LSD and shrooms and various other psychedelics, I had never experienced full-on hallucinations such as these. There was no body high and no sign that I was under any kind of influence. There was no way, other than logic, to tell if these feelings were real or fake. To my ears, eyes, and fingers, the hallucinations checked out to be real. The hallucinations persisted all night, and the next day my friend called up and stopped by. I told him the drugs I had taken, and he said that some of his friends would occasionally rent a hotel room and take alcohol and sleeping pills. I have no idea why. At this point, most of the hallucinations were gone, except for the spiders, which would occasionally crawl along under my clothes and bite me if I didn't try to squash them. I would also see people from afar, in cars or sitting on chairs. When I would ask another person, they said there was nobody there. In particular, I saw a group of 5 people sitting around laughing in the back of my van, people that nobody else saw. These visions persisted about 24 hours after I took the pills and alcohol. At one point, I was incredibly paranoid and scared that I had made myself permanently psychotic and that I would never come down. I thought that I was now schizo and that I would never be the same as a result of my experimentation. After 36 hours, all symptoms are gone, and I am very grateful for that. However, the research I do about stimulants like cocaine and amphetamine, which I have used rather frequently, the more I find out about their potential to cause psychosis. Every time that I use a stimulant, the thought, I may never be the same, occurs to me. It doesn't stop me, but some nights after an amphetamine binge, I see clouds of insects, and it reminds me that maybe stimulants are not to be trifled with. Much of the time, I view mind-altering substances as useful tools for exploring the metaphysical, as well as the inner soul. However, there are those times when too much time spent sober and a lack of psychedelic drugs prompt a reaction that I am never proud of. When these times come, I feel that I must change my state of mind, no matter what it is I take. These times are not uncommon, but I almost always control myself. I have prescriptions for Halcion and Dexedrine for my sleeping and concentration problems. Lately I have found that I only need half the prescribed dose of Halcion to fall asleep, and built up a stash of extra pills. Every now and then I have snorted the Halcion, resulting in a mild euphoria along with occasional slight memory loss afterwards. On this particular night, I snorted one 0.25 milligram pill. The dark side of my psyche that I hate prompted me to snort just one more half of a pill, then another, and another. And another, a total of 0.75 milligrams of Halcion. For those who have not heard of this drug, it is a common prescription sleeping pill, one of the most powerful to be found out there. A pill with 0.25 milligrams is the most potent that I know of. The drug can cause amnesia in high doses like I took, and especially if it is snorted. I barely remember taking 7 5 milligram pills out of my bottle of Dexedrine and chewing them. They are not chewable. My memory fades, and I recall the sight of the Temazepam bottle that my sister, who has a similar sleeping problem, accidentally left at my apartment. I took 3, I think. Before I took the Halcion, I had a stash of 4 10 milligram Valium pills in a bottle in my bathroom. Imagine my surprise this morning when I found the bottle open and empty on the sink, or when I saw the empty bottle of nutmeg on my stove that previously had maybe half an ounce, or the empty bottle of wine on the floor. The fact that my apartment was trashed only added to my dread. When I am sober, I would never consider taking so many drugs at once. It is not enjoyable or healthy. What scared me the most was the idea that I had wandered around my apartment after snorting 3 Halcion and proceeded to overload myself on whatever drugs I could find. There is nothing more frightening than the complete loss of control over your own actions, especially if this leads to ingesting more drugs that inhibit this control. Always treat pharmaceuticals with respect, and never, never abuse tranquilizers. Sleeping pills such as Halcion and tranquilizers like Valium cause memory loss and inhibit one's control over themselves. What fun is it getting high if I am disturbed by what I can't remember and ashamed by what I can? I got hold of some 30 milligram pills of Temazepam from a friend who said they were giving him hangovers as a sleep aid. He was ready to flush them, but I offered to take them off his hands since I get some pretty bad bouts of insomnia from time to time, and just because I love to experiment a bit when possible. The first night I took 2 just to feel them out, and awoke throughout the night pretty much covered in sweat, and twice had to get up to shower off and change blankets. Despite the bad experience, I decided I'd give them one more go at a dosage I'd read where some better experiences begin to take hold. So on a Saturday night, with nothing to do and nothing planned for tomorrow, I went ahead and took 150 milligrams. Sad to say, I felt nothing for the few hours I remained awake. I was hoping for at least some calming euphoria or slight delirium like with Ambien, but nothing. At about 2 o'clock, I went to bed feeling only mildly tired and hoping I wasn't as in for as rough a night as before with the sweats. I think I drifted off around 2:30, then woke again at 3 o'clock from what I can only describe as a horrible lucid sexual nightmare, covered in sweat, but too tired and confused to do anything at that point, but lay my head back down on my sweat-soaked pillow and drift off for another hour or so before I again awoke from one of the most lucid, violent nightmares of my life. Sheets, blanket, and bed completely covered in sweat. By now, it was about 4 o'clock in the morning, and I got up and took a cold shower, still half numb from my dream state, and then threw a new blanket plus pillowcase on the bed and tried to settle back down for some sort of sleep. Things went fine until about 6 o'clock when once again, I awoke covered in sweat, plagued by awful dreams. Only this time, I just returned to sleep, waking again then at 7 o'clock, then 8 o'clock, each time soaked and terrified. I showered again and put on some fresh clothes and laid on the couch where I managed to sleep in until about 10 o'clock. No nightmares or sweats, thank fuck. The day after, I was plagued by a huge hangover that seemed to shut my world down to a miniature size and make my head feel like it weighed an extra 5 pounds. Sleep cycle returned to normal immediately the next night. The hangover lasted about a day and a half. In my experience, it is a very shitty drug as a sleep aid, horrible for recreational purposes, and bad just in general. Not a good time. I would stay away. So since I own this nightmare drug YouTube channel, I'm always looking for new drugs to feature in my videos. When I was watching the Jeffrey Dahmer series on Netflix, I was interested in what kind of pills Jeffrey Dahmer was using to sedate his victims. I looked it up and found out it was halcyon and temazepam. There's not too many reports on it, but I found enough for this video, of course, because I'm making it right now, but I wanted to see what would happen to these people if they took it recreationally. Turns out, a lot of shit can happen on these drugs. Anyways, we got a couple more stories to go. And if you're enjoying this video so far, please hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. I would gladly appreciate it. I upload new videos every couple of days, and you do not want to miss a single one. So turn on that notification bell too. Alright, let's move on to these next few stories. This next one is extremely short, but it is very interesting. I took it around 10. It started to hit me, and I did not care anymore, so I took 5 more 20 minutes later. Well, I was drinking a little bit and just chilling when I decided to take my gun out and walk through my suburban neighborhood streets screaming and waving it around. Luckily, a friend drove by to pick me up. I am 20 years old and have had a lot of experience with drugs. In fact, I'm still struggling with a now 16-month heroin addiction. But this story is about some pharmaceuticals I decided to fuck with to get high and sedated because I couldn't sleep from withdrawals. Well, I was with my brother, who is 15, and I was really depressed. We were hanging in the basement playing video games. I got most of my pills from previous rehab attempts except for the temazepam. I'm prescribed 15 milligrams of temazepam a night for sleep. I would normally never think of doing this, but I was so desperate from the withdrawals, I just wasn't thinking right. I can't sleep while withdrawing, and that's all I wanted to do. It was 11:30 p.m. when I took all 10 pills at once, 5 temazepam at 15 milligrams, 1 trazodone 50 milligrams, 1 amitriptyline HCl at 50 milligrams, and 3 clonidine 0.3 milligrams. Just for the record, I would much rather just get some Suboxone. 11:30 p.m. Took all 10 pills at once with a gulp of water. 12 a.m. Went outside to smoke a cigarette with my brother and was feeling a bit wobbly, but nothing too bad. 12:30 a.m. Everything after this point, I have no memory of. Based on what my brother said, I got a phone call from my ex-girlfriend and was slurring my words, but sounded very happy. My brother left and came back 6 minutes later to find me slumped over on the chair I was sitting on. He said he slapped me a few times and I woke up. He then helped me inside, and I couldn't hold on to anything without dropping it. He said I fell over a few times and was slurring my speech so bad he could barely understand me. Throughout the night I kept passing out and my brother kept waking me up. Then I passed out and he couldn't wake me up at all. He opened my eyes and saw them extremely pinpoint. My brother stayed up the whole night to make sure I didn't die. He even said I stopped breathing at one point. I woke up at about 3:40 a.m., but still don't remember it, and then I passed out again till noon the next day. I woke up dazed and asked him what happened because I noticed things in the room were out of place from what I remembered. That's when he told me everything. I'm just glad to be alive, and I should never mix pills without doing the research. This was just a reminder to me, a slight reality check of where I'm heading if I keep up my heavy drug use. This isn't the worst thing that could have happened though. People die every day from mixing pills to get high. It is a dumb way to die. I have been plagued by insomnia for years, and it was only recently that I went to the doctor for pharmaceutical assistance. I was prescribed Sonata, and that usually did the trick. I sometimes took it during the day for a mellow high feeling. Then my sister, who suffered from short-term insomnia brought on by stress, came home from college with a whole bottle of Halcyon. I decided to give the small white pill a try. I took it the first time and fell asleep much faster and more calmer than with Sonata. 3 nights later, I once again found myself without sleep and went to the bottle again. 2 nights later, I did the same. This continued to happen until I was taking them every night just to fall asleep. The bottle was running low, and I was relieved when my sister ordered a refill, no questions asked. My life and sleep pattern dragged on, a slave to the Halcyon. During the day, I was numb, strung out, and indifferent to the world. I felt overjoyed when night came, and it was time for the pill. Eventually, I needed 2 pills just for an effect. I finally recognized the addiction I was in. My first night without the Halcyon was absolute hell. I had hid the bottle far under my sister's bed earlier in the day, figuring I'd be wanting it later and knowing I wouldn't retrieve it there for fear of waking her and needing to explain. I was absolutely restless and twitchy all night and did not fall asleep at all. The next day, I was irritable and cranky and started craving the pill, something I had never done during the day. The same followed the second night and day, and the third. I normally smoke a pack of cigarettes a day, but during this small time, I went through 11 and a half. It was not until the 4th night off that I slept, and this was only for 3 hours. After that, it became easier, and within 2 days, the cravings were basically gone. I now stay away from Halcyon completely and stick with my Sonatas. After using recreational drugs for 2 years, I was surprised to find my first real drug addiction, besides cigarettes, to something that wasn't even really fun. I got hooked just trying to sleep, and getting off of it was an absolute torture.